Right.
All right. Well, hello, my name's Andie Schwartz, and thank you so much for watching. But tonight's, I guess I want to give a little background first about who I am. So I'm part, of course, of the community and a lifetime member, currently on hold though, but a lifetime yogi. And I'm also a registered dietitian, and I'm a mom of two kids that I'm also go to lifetime usually. So you'll see me running around with them. But been in this nutrition industry for about 20 years. The last 10 in like a clinical kind of more nutrition science role, and then the last 10 years before that, I was doing more fitness nutrition and personal training. And this kind of brought me all to this whole like intuitive eating space. And just wanted to kind of share my story on kind of how that all came together. And then of course I'll get into the intuitive eating and like how you can apply it to like your yoga kind of lifestyle, yoga practice, and of course, off the table, on the table, etc. So my both my parents were very diet culture based. And so I remember like at a very young age, my mom would talk a lot about her, struggles with dieting and struggles with weight. And looking back, she really wasn't overweight, but like her perception of herself was that she was very overweight. And then my dad, being a busy working father, he had like 2 or 3 jobs at one point, when the three of us were really young. So he wasn't able to work out and maintain his normal kind of athletic fitness. So he kind of started getting on the diet culture bandwagon too. So, you hear these messages of, the dieting either from your home, or maybe it's in other areas. Another area I heard a lot about the diet culture was when I started competing in track and field in middle school, and we had a bunch of different teammates that were trying to make weight at these different weight classes back then, believe it or not, for not just wrestling, but they had it in track too. So, people are trying to get to these different weights, and, how do you get there when you're 12, 13 years old? Well, you have to extreme diet. So I don't think that's as common with the youth now, but there is still a lot of diet culture in other areas with the youth. So all that exposure really shaped me to start to wonder, like, kind of, is this diet culture something that's harmful, for individuals? Is it harmful for, teenagers, all types of age groups? And that's what I've really been focusing on now as a dietitian, is looking at all these different groups, and kind of trying to find like what messages are we getting, and how can we teach other messages that would be a lot more beneficial to have a healthier relationship with food. So that's really what we'll talk about now, is what is intuitive eating, what are the 10 principles behind it, and how can you apply that to your everyday kind of style of food and just exercise, because there is that exercise component to intuitive eating too. So I guess we'll start really with the 10 principles. So I like to read them because these are not mine. I will actually give credit to the two founders. This has been around now for about 25 years. Different approaches like this have been around longer, but Evelyn Tribble and Elise Reich developed intuitive eating in 1995. And they're both dietitians also, and they developed this kind of method or philosophy from just seeing the whole diet culture negatives, I should say, not benefits, the negatives in their patients and clients. So these are the 10 principles, and then we'll talk a little bit about each of them, but more from my spin. So number 1 is reject the diet mentality. Number 2, honor your hunger. Number 3, make peace with food. Number 4, challenge the food police. 5, feel your fullness. 6, discover the satisfaction factor. 7, cope with your feelings without using food. 8, respect your body. 9, exercise, feel the difference. And 10, honor your health. And then kind of a semicolon there, or colon rather, gentle nutrition. So those are the 10 principles. And with different clients, I often use different ones or touch upon different aspects of those. So it's really a very, as you can see, a very comprehensive approach, going through each and every one of those 10. But really, when you think of it, or the way I like to explain it more simply, because that's kind of a lot to wrap your brain around, is that there's kind of 2 or 3, I should say, aspects. It's instinct, emotion, and rational thought. So with instinct, it's knowing, or kind of having a sense of, this is what my body's telling me, kind of having that awareness. It's again, very similar to the yoga where, we observe and we notice and, we're present. So it's very much parallel to that, the emotion or the instinct part, because so much of the diet culture takes away our instinct. It's saying, well, okay, if your body's craving a carb, don't eat a carb because carbs are bad. And we'll get into what these terms, good and bad foods, kind of can do for our emotions and for our eating choices. But the instinct is really what we're trying to tap into more with intuitive eating, to get back to really what our bodies are telling us, and to be able to honor that in a way that is both fueling, giving our body the nutrition it needs, but also at times, emotional, which is why the next one is emotion. And the emotion one can be a little, I don't want to say controversial, but maybe confusing to some people, because we hear that, well, we shouldn't emotionally eat, and that, emotional eating, again, to use like the good and bad distinctions, right? Like the emotional eating is bad. And, food was really obviously there for nourishment, but food was also there to have a level of comfort, and it can be normal, and it is normal to have food serve that at times too. But again, our diet culture tells us that, no, food should not be for anything but giving us, the exact body type, the exact height, weight, whatever, your goals are. And that's kind of where that tapping back into the true emotion connection. And one example I like to give here that if you've had children is, when you're pregnant, you have so many different cravings at times. And there's some biological components to those cravings that perhaps that's been perceived as some of the nutrition or nutrients that you're lacking. And that's why you are then craving that food. I'm not saying that's the case with all of us. Like if you, are craving like a piece of bread, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need the exact bread for your fuel, but there is that part of tapping into your emotions and to kind of listening to also what you might need from your fueling regarding the emotion aspect. And then the rational thought, and this is kind of where I come in even more, is that we take the instinct, okay, I'm feeling the hunger, the emotion, yeah, I'm actually really feeling the hunger because I need these extra calories from, let's say a run or some sort of more intense workout, or maybe you just didn't have as big of a breakfast. And that's where the rational thought comes in, because the rational thought is going to help you know that with nutrition science, there are certain combinations of food. There's like balance of nutrients that are going to provide more lasting energy. For example, if you're eating, let's say a lunch, and you just had like iceberg lettuce or some sort of very, light green lettuce, that is not going to have as many nutrients as like a spinach or spring greens. So, and then if you added a protein to that, like you added either vegetarian, vegan, or animal protein, whatever you're choosing, that's going to increase the duration and your satiety factor because of the extra nutrients in that protein, as well as the extra fiber and nutrients in the darker greens. So that's where like the rational thought comes in too. It's not like with intuitive eating, it's like, well, what do I want to eat right now? And you just kind of grab something. I mean, you are observing, you are connecting, but you're also using the rational thought part or piece to then make the best, combination of nutrition for what you're needing it for. Again, maybe if it is an emotional thing, then you can honor that and do that. Or if it's, again, true hunger, true needing that lasting energy, then you make a choice to have maybe a little more carbs with that meal, a little more fiber, a little more protein. So I think it's really interesting that, this way of eating and this kind of philosophy does really incorporate so many aspects of our being, the whole mind, body, spirit, that really do tap in a lot with our yoga practice. And I think that's also why I was so attracted to using this type of technique, and also seeing how it, kind of worked for me too. And, I'm just so thankful that, with the strong diet culture that I had grown up with, and then, a lot of track teammates that I had in college, had a lot of disordered eating patterns that, just given the background and understanding of this type of philosophy, I think really, really helped me not kind of get into that type of issue. Not that I'm not affected by diet culture, because certainly we all are, but I think that it's just been so helpful to have this, this understanding and this type of approach, instead of kind of getting wrapped into the latest diet. And, diets I do want to speak on the diets. I mean, diets can work for certain medical conditions. And I certainly, as a clinical dietitian in the past, have put people on specific diets, but they're usually, again, for some sort of medical necessity or some sort of short duration type of condition that typically, at least we're hoping, resolves over time, where, this intuitive eating is something that you can do your entire life and has like a very like long lasting solution to whatever you're trying to kind of promote or fix with your eating pattern. So I definitely, because we don't have as many, I would definitely be open to any questions that you might have about it. We can stop the recording. Those are the main things I want to talk about, but I'm certainly open to doing more offline. If you had some specific questions, I don't know if you're going to give me like a thumbs up or thumbs down for any questions, or I can keep talking. I just wanted to make sure it was like, I wanted to be interactive.
Yeah. I don't know much about intuitive eating, but I love that, I've heard of it before, and I love your explanation of the rational thought part, right?
Yeah.
Because, from what I hear is like, oh, intuitive eating, you just eat whatever you want.
Right.
Like for me, I'm like, well, that can be dangerous, because I definitely am an emotional eater. And that's what I'm curious about too, is like, I know there are times where I get addicted to sugar, where it's like it's that, right? There's some science behind that.
The dopamine.
Release.
The dopamine.
I mean,
yeah,
there's
absolutely.
been times where anytime after I eat food, I'm like, I have to find a piece of chocolate. And I'm telling you, it's a real thing,
Yeah.
and I feel myself like craving it. So I guess that's where like I get worried where I hear intuitive eating, and like to me, I hear no control.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's important to like break it into, the instinct, emotional, and the rational thought, because even though it's intuitive, it's not a complete just eat whatever, whenever, however you want. I mean, that's unfortunately how too many of us are eating. I mean, and I don't like to really bring up body size, or I really am like a health at every size dietitian, which is really the approach where we all are different. Like we all have different obviously physiologies, we all have different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. And I mean, there really is science that, with all the different cultures and ethnicities, that we are like pre-programmed to just have certain body sizes. And so that's where, we don't focus on the eating in relationship to a size. But to your point, diabetes, of course, I mean, there's so many metabolic syndromes out there that relate to sugar intake. And I mean, just the rise of prediabetes, not just in adults, but in the youth. I mean, so certainly there is a strong connection to our food choices and our body's health. So we don't, with intuitive eating, just say, well, yeah, have as much grams of sugar per day as your body's, wanting. That's the rational thought piece. And it is really hard right now with the sugar, because so many of the food companies are putting sugar in our foods that we wouldn't even think would have sugar in it. And it's like, which is kind of funny, it was like number 6 is like, or 4 rather, it was challenge the food police. And so, you don't want to be so wrapped up with like you're studying and analyzing every food label that comes in front of your face, or that every food you put in, you're having to hyper, analyze. But there is that component that I teach, because without understanding the hidden sugars, and without understanding, as Lisa said, that sort of craving, or almost, I mean, I hate to use the word addiction, because that, not for you, Lisa, but for some people, because it's not quite as addictive as true like substances, but it does still have addictive qualities. And the dopamine the dopamine that our brain does, kind of increase from the sugar is a real thing. It's just they don't understand quite the same as they do with other substances. So they know there's a connection there. They just can't say necessarily. I mean, you'll hear different people claim that it's addictive and that it's all these things. And again, it does have addictive qualities, but as far as the research that I've been reading and have read over the years, I haven't seen like a scientist or hard research come out and say like, we know for sure that, sugar intake is affecting our brain and our body in a way that like other harmful substances do. It's just, we know it affects our organs and, our endocrine system and our pancreas and all the things that are involved with, metabolic syndrome. But that is something to observe though. I mean, if you want to talk about, what you mentioned about that after eating kind of craving, that is something to observe. And that's where the intuitive eating emotional part, I would say, not that you need to always question, but like, let's say you're doing your normal dose, I call it like dose, but like your normal kind of portion of it. And then you're like, oh no, but I want more. And then, so that's where I think I definitely recommend to observe, well, why am I wanting more? And is it because I didn't fuel enough with my meals? And so that's what I see a lot. Is like when we have those intense cravings, particularly with sugar or like more flour-based carbs, like, or sweets, I should say, it's that maybe we're not fueling enough in the earlier parts of the day, because this tends to happen a lot for people more at night. And so maybe our earlier fueling isn't either balanced enough or isn't enough volume. So isn't enough like calories per se, although I don't really talk about calories a lot, because that's kind of too like counting and metric, which intuitive eating we don't like to get into too much metrics with that. But that's where you could look at the balance of your foods and how you're combining them and what times you're eating and how much activity you're having. And then that would give maybe a bet you could try like, well, if I have a larger lunch or a little more healthy fat at my dinner, which actually is completely the case for me, then I notice that my cravings go down significantly. I didn't share this part of my story, but I was actually diagnosed with hypoglycemia in college, which hyperglycemia is what really diabetes is. And I was actually diagnosed with like basically the complete 180 of that, which is where my blood sugars tend to drop really low. And so that taught me that I have to really be very strategic about how I eat, because if they're too low, then, you get these crazy symptoms of like shakiness and, brain fog and headaches and, create like sweating, like intense sweating. So sometimes we'll get, I mean, that's an extreme example, but we'll get different like physiological signals to tell us like we should eat more or we should eat a different way. And that's where then, through trying these different steps, we might be able to say like, okay, I do notice those cravings are much less because I changed my patterns earlier, or I was just actually in an emotional mood. And that's why I was wanting that chocolate. And really that's okay. But if it's every night, well, then that's where we might want to kind of reassess what else could we do to have like more of an emotional fill up, if you will. So it's kind of, I don't know, that's like a long answer there, but I hope that helped.
No, definitely. It's so funny how really interconnected all of this is, because I was working with a one-on-one meditation client who happens to also be a member of OA, Overeating Anonymous. And
Sure.
we're talking about like how awareness, right? The awareness you gain through meditation is so connected to all of her work in OA, of like noticing how food is like how she was using food to suppress emotion.
Yeah.
And that's, I definitely connect with that. Like when I don't feel good, when I feel some discomfort, I do something to take that away. So it might be, a glass of wine or a really sugary treat, or it's something to distract yourself. And I think it's the awareness. Like Susan knows, we in yoga teacher training, we do yoga meals, and yoga meals are all about just being mindful when you eat, right? Not some of the guidelines around yoga meals are like, you take a bite, you put your fork down,
Put
you
your
chew
fork down. Yeah. So that's like
it,
mindful eating.
and you taste it,
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
like the mindful eating.
right. And you only really take 2 handfuls, and then wait a little bit, see if you're still hungry. Like, you listen to your body, because I know, like, I'll get a whole plate of food, eat it really quick, and then I'm like, ugh, I feel so gross.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
if I
exactly.
take that like slow mindfulness approach, and it really sounds like intuitive, right? Am I still hungry? If you're still hungry, yes, you go and you get some more.
Yeah.
So it's all so connected.
I'm glad you brought up the yoga meals. And that's actually really cool that you guys do that, because mindful eating is another branch of like the awareness eating. It's just like it has a different founder, like different they don't have like the 10 principles, but it is still, like you said, like the premise is awareness, and it's learning yourself, learning your habits, learning your tendencies, learning your triggers in some ways. And I do think, I mean, again, I'm human too. And this is where I always laugh, because people will say, well, you're a dietitian. Like, why are you eating that? And I'm like, because I like it. Like, I'm totally fine having a slice of pizza. I'm totally fine having cake. Like, my son's birthday was yesterday. And yes, I made cake and I ate cake, and I'm glad I had the cake. But now where the irrational thought comes in is, people laugh when they see my portions, though. Like, I know, because I still have that like hypoglycemia borderline. If I'm not careful and have like too high of sugar, then it comes down really quickly. So because I've learned to know myself, and know, of course, how much foods can affect my body, I do a smaller slice. So, we can all like know what works for us. I mean, some people this doesn't work for. I mean, there are some people, like your client, like, I would not take this route with an overeater initially, not at all. because they would totally take advantage of it, right? I mean, they would be like, well, it says, emotional eating's okay sometimes, so I'm gonna go for it, right? So this is not for just any really disordered eating. This is not like the first line of treatment by far. I mean, they actually tend to need, almost always need like medical and clinical supervision, and they do need to be weighed often, and they do need their calories counted. It was more if they're like under eating, like the anorexic bulimia population. But overeaters too, like they can go 180 and then not eat for a while because they're really guilty, and they also can have a lot of binging history too. But if you're just like coming off a lot of diets, and just coming off like sort of this like frustration of like wanting to find another way, or just kind of just feeling that you want to try something else, then the intuitive eating really has a good fit and tends to be really successful. But it is a little complex to really get through like all of the nuances with it. I mean, those 10, I didn't go through each 10 very, very in depth, because like that could take hours. But if there's any, and I can reread them if you want, if there's any of those 10 that you want me to talk about more, I mean, I'm wondering with what you were saying, I mean, it doesn't sound, I mean, discover the satisfaction factor. I mean, that one might tie in. So, and number 7, actually, too, cope with your feelings without using food. I would say that
Number 7 is the one.
yeah, I mean, number 6 though. So number 6, like that ties in a lot to what I was saying, like with the cake and different sweets with me. Like, I'm able to be so satisfied and appreciative of eating that amount, because I know, again, mine's a little more biological, but I know that like this, I'm so glad I could eat this instead of like never being able to eat it because of some rule that I made because of, my hypoglycemia, or because of my like job as a dietitian, and dietitians can't eat that way. And so I think like those can relate to different people. I probably would see those, and then the make peace with food a lot too, because a lot of people think like, well, I just can't eat that. And, it is really a matter of, when, how often, how much. And, a lot of us can over time create that balance. I mean, I know I wasn't where I'm at now when I was in college and, first got diagnosed. I was just like, whatever, I don't, they told me I can't or shouldn't eat this. And, as a college student, like, what do? You go out drinking and you eat pizza. So We all go through stages of when we're ready and willing to do these things and do the work, which I love how you always say that. I mean, this is work, this type of living and eating is work. And it's a lot of self work, which I guess us yogis tend to embrace. But, a lot of people that are looking for that quick fix and want to drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks, this is not going to be easy for them. It's not even easy for people that are ready for it sometimes, because we're not focusing on actual weight goals right away. But over time, you will see weight goals, because you're finally giving your body the nutrients it needs, and not giving it this restriction and then overeating oftentimes, and then this extreme restriction, and then the binging that often comes after the diets. And so it's definitely like a practice, just like yoga. But there are certain populations where they're very resistant to it. And again, some that I mentioned I would not start with Haitian on it because of their background. But it's really, I mean, it's something you could like study forever. Like I still study it. Like I'll just read more of their books. They have like 3 or 4 books out. Evelyn does, and Elise, and I mean, they've been around for, like I said, over 20 years, and they keep publishing new stuff and new things that just like enhance these types of approaches. And my first degree was in psychology, so I'm like super deep in that stuff. And then of course with the yoga and then the nutrition science that they get into, I just find it fascinating. So I kind of geek out on it.
I think that ultimately, from what, and just from listening to you, for the last half hour, it ultimately comes down, it sounds like it comes down to, in those 3 principles that you talked about, instinct, emotion, and rational thought. It sounds like it's empowering the person to take, kind of take control back, instead of like, all these quick fixes, or, it sounds like more of like a long-term, like, yes, anything that is worth it takes a while and is a journey.
Absolutely.
And, but, I think that it sounds like in the long run is the most empowering place to be, rather than like, I'm this, person who has to do this and has to do this. Is like, I get to make these choices, and I get to take control back, and I get to, listen to myself. So I think it's amazing. I think that
thank you.
You are amazing, and that
thank you.
With having like all the background, because you are yoga certified, right?
Yeah, just last April though, so newish.
Yeah. And you are a personal trainer too, right?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I maintain all my certifications, but I haven't done one-on-one clients in like over 10 years. But it's something that I integrate in my programs. It's just not the same way I used to do it, before. But no, I love how you did say like it's like taking the power back, because I think, I mean, let's face it. And actually, I was just reading this. I wish I had, since I'm on my phone, I can't pull it up. But if I recall, the statistic that came out just recently, I posted it to my Twitter. So if you actually check my Twitter, but it was something like the food industry is like a 700, and it could be slightly off here, but like, let's say $762 billion industry or something like that. And so again, not to like point fingers and blaming, because I'm not trying to be about that, but diets sell, right? I mean, the books, I mean, if you look at Atkins, a lot of these, I mean, not as much popular now, but like the revenue that he and that whole Atkins diet, and then obviously there's so many more, I'm not going to, go into it now, but I mean, if you look at their revenues versus like what, Evelyn and Elise probably make, with this kind of approach, I mean, it's like people really are drawn to that, like, shiny new object, right? I call it like the shiny new object syndrome. It's like we're drawn as humans to like wanting that shiny new object, when really like we were born with this. We were born on what and how to eat. And it's just like, it's gotten so messy with all the food companies and all the fast food and just, kind of like a lot of chaos that's around us all the time, like removing us more from what like our kind of natural food sources would be. So again, I could get on a whole soapbox about that, but no, it is so empowering, Lisa. And like I said, like I am so thankful that even just for me, all the background I gave with my family and my teammates, and just seeing a lot of people that I really cared about get really sick from stuff like this. And even patients. I mean, let's face it, like I see it front and center in my patients, and the pain they have, and the shame and the guilt, and just so many negative emotions that become part of this whole relationship. So I just feel so passionate about sharing that there's totally a different way. And you know I'm not a therapist, right? Like I do have a psychology degree, but I focus obviously a lot more on the rational thought and teaching the science behind it. But I certainly like weave in like the instinct and emotion. But I always still encourage people. I'm like, if you're really struggling, see a therapist, or do more yoga, do more meditation. Like, we need to do the work to heal and have our bodies and our minds be back connected in that positive way, not the fighting each other way.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
Annie, where
hopefully.
can people find more information or reach you?
Probably the website's the easiest. I mean, the website has on the very bottom, it's probably not super visible, and I'm working on redoing the website, but it has like all my social media handles, which are all the same. It's Namaste and Nutrition all together. So, you guys can spell Namaste, but Namaste and Nutrition for Instagram, also for Facebook, and then Twitter. Twitter, interestingly, I had to shorten it because they only
Yeah.
have so many characters. So it's Namaste RD, Namaste RD, because I couldn't write out
And
nutrition.
the website what's the
Oh
website?
yeah, the website's RD, so registered dietitian Andie, and I spell it ANDIE. So rdandie.com.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, so definitely, and I'd love to come back on, or fingers crossed when we can actually get in person, be more in person
Yeah.
again. Like I would love to, like I have like worksheets I do with people, and actually I have an activity that we do, like a mindful eating activity, where like we go through like the different kind of mindful steps of like the food, and how like our brain reacts to it. So it's kind of, it's better in person, but this
Yeah.
at least was a way to introduce the concept, I guess.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll, this way, if anybody has questions, but I'm going to
Okay.
stop the recording for now. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah.